name is Obi Okereke, the Vice President for Education. And today on the panel, I have some members of the university senior leadership team, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Thanks, Obi. Shall I go first?
Yes, please.
So my name's Professor Guy Daly. I'm Deputy Vice Chancellor for Education and Students. Great to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation again. These events are really helpful as far as the university's leadership team is concerned. It does provide us with an opportunity of the conversation with you, exploring the issues that students are facing, and hopefully providing a response this morning, but also when there are occasions when we don't necessarily have all of the answers at our fingertips today, then we will take them away and then bring them back and feed back to colleagues. So thanks once again. I'll hand over to in the order that it's in front of me, if I may. So Richard Dashwood, my DVC research colleague.
Hi, well, yeah, you've introduced me there. Professor Richard Dashwood, Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research. I'm here because I have responsibility for all of the postgraduate research students. So ultimately, it's my fault when things go wrong. So I'm here to answer questions around the research students.
Donna?
Hand over to Donna.
Thank you. I'm Donna Kendall. I'm Pro Vice Chancellor for the Student Journey, and I'm here to answer any questions in relation to that student journey. Thanks, Guy.
Lovely, thank you. And I think we do now have Steve Galliford, who's been able to join us.
Had a little difficulty, but yes, thank you, Guy. I'm Steve Galliford. I'm the Dean of Postgraduate Studies, so I look after all the postgraduate taught students, so students on postgrad certificates, diplomas, or master's courses.
Okay then, thanks for the introduction.
We all know that postgraduate students are at the university for just 1 year and are now having most if not all of their education online due to COVID, the situation of COVID. In terms of employability, what is the university doing to equip or give students the skill and experience to make them industry ready, to make them ready for their desired job market or the working industry?
Thank you. I'm going to hand to Steve Galliford, our postgraduate dean, if I may.
I thought you might.
Yeah, and maybe student journey too.
Thank you very much. Good question. So I think there's a lot of things going on for postgraduates. The first thing I would say is that we have this year revamped the university revamped the entire careers and employability offer under the Coventry Talent banner. I think we've still got a little bit more work to do on that as far as postgraduates are concerned, if I'm honest with you, and I will take that forward because many of the services and facilities which are on offer are open to, but not many, all of them are open to postgraduate students, but our branding doesn't actually make that clear in some cases. So I'll get onto that straight away and make sure that all postgraduate taught students know that all of the great offer that the talent team make available is open to them. So that's the first thing, and thank you for prompting me to get on with that. I'll very briefly mention that the majority of postgraduate taught students do take the CMI modules as the set of modules that are accredited by CMI, and they're exactly doing what you've just asked. They are directly targeting and developing students' employability skills in leadership and management, giving them an additional qualification alongside their postgraduate course and a professional accreditation. So in the cases where those students take those modules, I think we're addressing that agenda head on, and the feedback we get from employers is very positive about that. There's lots of short-term things that students can do to help themselves, which we can help facilitate. There's a virtual careers fair, I think, coming up very soon, and I'd very much encourage students to connect into that. It's pretty much going to be exactly the same as the physical fair, but we can't do it because of the COVID rules, but it'll be, I think, an excellent event. I think the last I heard there were over 50 national and global employers coming to that event, so there's all those sorts of things happening. And also, I think if I can take a moment to plug or to promote some of the facilities we have in a virtual world, Vygo being one of them. Vygo is a mentoring app that students can take part to download either as a mentor or as a mentee. And I think for a mentee, it has fantastic opportunities for people to use. But for mentors as well, that is something that's directly assisting students develop their own skills. And we have lots of students actually volunteered to do that, to mentor younger or students who are new to the university, developing your own skills. And there are lots of opportunities in volunteering and virtual internships. So lots of things happening, but I do accept the point that we probably need to promote it more to the postgraduate talk community. So I will crack on with that. And thanks for prompting me.
Thank you.
Students are concerned about the application of the No-detriment policy and are unsure whether it will be applied in the same way as last year. Can you tell us how the policy will be implemented this year and how it differs from last year?
Thanks, Obi. And indeed, you did raise this at Academic Affairs Committee, didn't you, the other week? I know this bit sort of almost off by heart, as it were. There were 4 parts to our no-detriment policy. Most of them, 2 of them for sure, are embedded now within our regulations anyway. So the number 2 was to ensure that when it comes to an assessment, that the assessment board ensures that moderation has occurred to ensure that that group of students for that assessment on that module is in line with expectations, is in line with what previous students will have done on that module. And if it is out of sequence, if the distribution of marks, the spread of marks, the profile of them is either too high or too low compared with what would usually be expected and historically, then we would calibrate accordingly. What we also do is to look at a particular module and see how the performance of a group of students compares with those students' performance on other modules as well. So that's an element of moderation and calibration that will continue. The third element was to provide those additional ways of calculating someone's degree classification or postgraduate award, which Steve can give the detail if people wish for it. And on that, as an example, we said that because during lockdown there was that period in semester 2 where people might have had detriments, might have been disadvantaged, what we said was that we would bring in an additional way of calculating someone's degree classification, whereby in addition to having an average of marks at your final year or average of marks at years 2 and 3, that we would allow for an average across all years, and that students' average will be based on their best 300 credits out of the 360 for an honours programme. Which meant that therefore, if detriment had occurred during that sort of semester 2 period last year, that they wouldn't be disadvantaged because they could have other modules counted, used for the degree classification instead. That is embedded now within the academic regulations. So for continuing students, they can have that additional method of degree classification and the others for the other academic awards, and indeed for new students as well. So that is ongoing, that will apply. The other 2 bits of our no detriment policy was to allow students to have automatic extensions or deferrals. I think our thinking at the moment is that wouldn't be helpful, but that we should make it easier for students in the process of, if they wish for an extension or a deferral, whereby all of the needing medical documentation, etc., won't be required, not least because it'll be very difficult for students to get hold of it, and it's putting an extra demand on our health services, which are already under tremendous pressure. So there will be some easing in terms of obtaining extensions or deferrals, but there wouldn't be the automatic. People will still have to apply for them. The last bit of no detriment was that we had the extraordinary appeals review panel, tended to be made up of Ian Dunn, the provost, myself, senior colleague from registry, and either undergraduate or postgraduate dean, whereby if somebody was just literally within 0.5% of a upper degree classification, that panel would listen to an appeal made usually by the academic colleagues at their assessment board for consideration. And I can see that continuing as well. So that's a long-winded way of saying that all aspects of our no detriment policy that we implemented last academic year still exist and will be applied for students going forward.
Okay, so for clarifications, if a cohort scores higher than average, will they be downgraded?
Yeah, they would. So we had, if we had an example of a module where, the average and the distribution curve was all in the 90s, for example, which we did have, and yet that group of students for everything else got a more normal distribution and an average, say, of 55, and previous years did the same, then it would be wrong of us not to respond to that, in my view. We've got a responsibility to ensure that our academic awards stand up to scrutiny and stand up to reputation. And it is in nobody's interest, including the student who maybe would like the 90% rather than the 55%. It is in nobody's interest for us to get a reputation for having awards that don't have that academic integrity. So that is our position.
Could I just come in on the postgraduate for a moment? But partly to support what Guy's just said about maintaining that academic credibility, which actually would have happened in a non-COVID world anyway. You would always have had that check and balance. I visit universities as an external examiner and do just that.
Yep.
And I see marks that are out of step.
Yep.
That's just an ancillary point. The point I just wanted to clarify for the no detriment, which is enshrined in the regulations now, is that master's courses now, or master's degree courses now take their classification, which is slightly different to undergraduate, as you know, merit or distinction or pass, on the best 120 credits out of 180. So it effectively is the same, allowing a semester which is affected to be essentially ignored. But if the marks are strong, they will be taken into account. So I think that's a fair way of doing it.
Thanks, Steve. And just therefore to reinforce the point that in some ways that Obi, the situation of a profile of marks for students that was in the 90s, which was out of sync with history, we would always have taken action on that. So it's not a new thing.
Yeah, it's not.
And similarly, if there's a cluster of marks around 30% and it's usually 50, we would also look at that as well.
Some students want to know why fees have not been reduced when they feel they are getting a poorer quality of teaching and have less access to the areas on campus.
Okay, I'll start on that one, and other colleagues no doubt will come in. And I think it did come up as an issue in terms of the postgraduate research students as well. So I'll invite Richard in a second after me. But as I mentioned in sort of my introduction and sort of general briefing and update, I think it's a misnomer to think that our delivery mode currently is cheaper. There is a debate as to whether or not students are receiving the same level of quality, the same level of service, and all that. We are doing our level best to ensure that that is the case, and some students have said that they think it is better than they had previously received. But it is more costly. You know, the easiest thing in the world for us in some ways would have been just to say everything is being delivered online, which is what some universities did. We believe that was the easy option, and in some ways the less responsible option. So hence our wanting to provide an element of face-to-face, and also to ensure that our online provision is as engaging as possible. But that does come with a cost to us. So academics who would in the past have taught potentially a group of 120 students at any one time are now having to teach them in 4 sessions of groups of 30, as it were. That has a cost for us, as does the setting up of labs at greater frequency, etc., and other such things. In addition, our investment in things like Bibliu in the library to ensure that all of the library learning materials online, that's been an initial investment, as has the investment in Aula, a significant investment there. So, and on top of that, you know, the university, as the Vice Chancellor was briefing all of us as university colleagues just the other day, you know, we have got significant challenges in terms of our budget. With the reduction in student numbers, we did pretty well. We did enroll 30,000 for the September period, but that was probably still a couple of thousand short on what we would usually have got and what we have usually budgeted for. So we did scenario plan, and we're in a situation whereby we're predicting probably a loss of income, as it were, of about 80 million in comparison to what we would have usually expected for this academic year. So it is costing us more. We have less resource. I think the other thing I would say, which is verging on the political, that universities have bid to government for additional support. That has not been very forthcoming. There's been a bit in terms of research, and Richard can pick up on that better than I can. But I would use the comparison with the Eat Out to Help Out campaign that the government encouraged us to do, whereby it said that, you know, you go along to a restaurant, I think it was Monday to Wednesday or whatever, and you can get you know, half price or whatever it is. The restaurant or the pub didn't cut its prices. What the restaurant or pub did was it got that funding from government to supplement its reduction from the customer. We have not been provided with any such support, but we have, as a sector, asked that government does support higher education, and that if the government believes there should be a reduction in fees, that it should help in the funding of that. That's the end of my party political broadcast, I think. Over to Richard.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm unmuted now.
So I think Richard can come in terms of responding in terms of queries around PGR and quality, cost, and everything in that regard.
Well, I think in terms of PGR supervision, we are not expecting anyone that has to extend their studies because of COVID, because they've been delayed due to COVID, to pay any extra fees. So we're waiving all fees for PGR students. We're doing it on a case-by-case basis, in a rolling basis, because we don't want to, you know, everybody will come at once. We're doing it once the people are within 3 months of the end of their studies. We're taking a small case. People just have to write a small case, and we will then agree to it. I don't think we've actually not agreed to anything. The reason that we're not doing it automatically is that we do need to have something on file to justify the use of sort of public monies. So it's just it's a formality. But I think there have been a couple of hiccups where people, having already been said we'd waive the fee, have then been charged, and we've sorted that out now, and we apologise for that. That was an administrative error within finance, not at our end. And ones that any students that are funded by the university to do a PGR, we're extending their stipends as well, in addition to waiving fees. So we've done everything I think we can do. We've not received a penny from the government to support PGR students at all, just to be clear on that. So we've had no extra funding whatsoever to support postgraduate research students.
Okay.
All of that is coming from our own budgets.
Okay, so thank you for the answer, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining to this session, and the panel, the attendees. So the answers to each question, we'll distribute them on social media, YouTube, and all our channels. So thank you everyone for joining, and have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank you, Obi. Thanks, colleagues.
Thank you.
Bye.